This week we have something very, very special. We're going to be talking to somebody who, I'm going to embarrass her here, is an author about the Camino, has been a Hospitalera many, many times, has walked thousands of kilometers on the Camino, much more than I will ever do, and lives in Santiago de Compostela. Coming right up, let's see who it is. So, Sybille Yates, you're a bit of a legend in Camino circles. Did I get that right? You're an author, you've been a Hospitalera many times, you walked thousands of Ks, and you live in Santiago.
Okay, I most certainly live in Santiago, 8 years now.
Yeah.
Also, I wrote years back one book about preparing for the Camino. I'm not really sure that makes me an author.
Oh, well, I've got it. I thought it was very good.
Thank you.
So I would almost go as far as to really embarrass you and call you a bit of a Camino angel, which will become apparent as we talk. And anyone watching this, I do urge you to stay to the end because there's something really special I'm going to be asking Sybille about, and which I know a little bit about, but I think you'll be intrigued by it. So, Sybille, maybe I could start off with a really simple question because this is, you've been involved with the Camino over so many years. What is the Camino to you? What does it mean to you?
Ooh, that's a very multi-layered question. I did the first Camino my first Camino, the Camino Frances, in the winter of 1999-2000, and actually lived through the change of the millennium here in Santiago de Compostela. So that was something very special. And I think the meaning for me personally of the Camino has, I wouldn't say changed over the years, but it has become more and more difficult to just wrap it up in one sentence. So for me, the Camino is both meditation, it's praying with your feet, it's sometimes painful feet, it's sometimes exhaustion, it's the encounter with other pilgrims, with the locals, and perhaps most importantly, learning more about myself, how I react in different situations, and also learning more about others, learning more about the landscape, the history, everything I walk through. And like you mentioned, I've done several pilgrimages, not only in Spain and Portugal, but also in wider Europe. And some of them were a bit off the beaten track, so to speak, where less pilgrims are around. So every Camino is different.
It is. It is. I love that term that you used, praying with your feet.
I didn't invent it.
No,
Somebody
no, no,
else
but I love
picked it
the
up from
term.
somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you walk, like in the background, you have, I think it's the meseta, if I'm correct. If you are in an environment where there are little outside distractions, you can really concentrate on what is going inside of yourself. And with praying, I don't mean so much formal prayers. It's more like an inner monologue, working through things. Yes, addressing it to God. I'm a Christian, a pretty liberal one, by the way. And so, yeah, I think the Camino in any stage, not only the meseta, can facilitate that.
I love the way you talk there about the meseta particularly being, it doesn't have much distraction, and I suppose that leads us to think a little bit about walking a Camino without our devices being on all the time. And I mean, particularly I like walking alone, and that's probably the same reason, because I want the solitude. I want that inner sort of thought process.
Modern devices certainly can be a distraction, but also they have saved a lot of lives. When I
Very true.
first walked the Camino, I had a mobile for emergency reasons with me. But in 99, rural Spain, there wasn't much of cover of reception of mobile signals. And now you get it pretty much everywhere. So I think it's always a tool.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
I think of it, you need to know when to pick up the tool and use it and when to put it down. So normally when I walk a Camino or even go for a walk through the countryside, I have a mobile with me, but it's normally hidden in my, what I call the kangaroo bag. And I take it out when I need it, but I'm not glued to it when I don't need it.
That's a good way to put it. Now, you mentioned that you've been a Hospitalera before. What drew you to being a Hospitalera? I mean, that's quite a commitment.
First, I have to say that was mainly between the years 2000 and 2004. So a very, very different time on the Camino. The albergues were much more simple, including the accommodation for Hospitaleros was much more simple. It's the old cliche of giving back what I had received.
Yeah, that's good. And of course, you're very well qualified because let me get this right. Your native language is German. You speak fluent English. You speak fluent Spanish as well, don't you?
Yes, and French.
And French.
Conversational French. I'm not fluent in French.
Only conversational French. You make me feel like an incompetent. That's wonderful that you have that language ability as a Hospitalera.
Yes, that's helpful. I'm also a retired nurse.
Oh, wow.
Which means my best first aid skill is dialing 112 very quickly.
You wrote some very interesting things online recently about hydration, which I thought were excellent.
Yes.
Some tips on hydration. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that. So what are some of the changes that you've seen over the years? You've been involved with the Camino for 25 years.
I think one change clearly is there are far more places to stay now. When I walked in 99 on the Camino Frances, which at that time was pretty much the only one that was really known and covered by guidebooks outside of Spain. The Camino del Norte, there was a German guidebook, but it was like only for experienced adventurers. So albergues were at that time every 20, 25 kilometers. Now, the last time I looked, there is literally really not one single village on the Camino Frances that doesn't have at least one albergue. When we arrived with my little Camino family in 99 in Santiago, there was one single albergue in Santiago. That was the Seminario Menor Belvis, the big thing up the hill, a bit away from the cathedral. The last time I looked it up, there were around 30 albergues in Santiago.
Wow. So
the other thing that has changed is the use of devices, of apps, some useful, some make me a bit smile. Sometimes I wonder, I live in Santiago, where a few hundred meters from the last stretch of the Camino Frances coming into town. And if I see pilgrims really walking through the city, which is extremely well signposted, holding a device before them, trying to find the Camino, and sometimes I want to shout at them, look up
at the cathedral.
Of the cathedral. It's so I think I noticed more a dependence on devices where they're actually not really needed.
Yeah. So what is it like living in Santiago? You've been there 10 years. I have to confess, I have dropped in for tea and biscuits. I will do that again. It's a lovely part of Santiago that you live in.
And couple of mistakes. First of all, 8 years in Santiago. Second, the place I don't live there anymore.
Oh, you've moved. Okay.
Just shortly before the pandemic hit us all, I moved to another part of Santiago. And I don't do the open house anymore because where I live, the flat is smaller and it's not
Okay.
suitable.
So scrub that, people. You can't drop in and see Sybille for tea and biscuits anymore.
No.
I was
You can
lucky to
drop
have
in
done that.
and go for coffee elsewhere. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
But if somebody wants to meet up, they have to contact me first.
Yeah. So life in Santiago, you must have seen over the last 10 years changes. And what are some of the
Yes.
impacts, good and bad, with all the pilgrims?
Santiago has a pretty clear annual rhythm. So the pilgrim season starts a bit before Easter, which we all know changes every year a bit. So roughly it goes for March. I used to say until the midst of October, but over the last 8 years, it has changed. Pilgrims don't necessarily start earlier in the year, but it goes longer. So now we have pilgrims in reasonable large numbers until end of October, midst of November.
All right.
And then from November, second half of November until Lent starts, Santiago is pretty much pilgrim free. I mean, the few pilgrims who arrive, they are barely noticeable. And especially in January, after the 6th of January, which is a big fiesta day here, because it's Epiphany, the Three Kings Day. And interesting Spanish cultural tidbit, traditionally Spanish children got their Christmas gifts on 6th of January, because that's when the three kings, the three wise men, came to the baby Jesus to give him the gift. That has changed over the years, and now the Spanish children are very fortunate. Half the family, they get Christmas gifts on Christmas and on the 6th of January.
Oh, I want to be Spanish.
After the 6th of January, Santiago really closes down pretty much until around Lent starts, and the pilgrims increase a bit. So it's basically only the locals, and a lot of places are closed.
So the pilgrim numbers have been increasing the last few years, haven't they? I mean, it almost hit 500,000 collected at Compostela last year, which means there was probably well over 500,000 walking. What do the people of Santiago think of the pilgrims? I suppose some must hate it.
I wouldn't say they hate it. It depends if they benefit directly from pilgrims, like people who have a bar, a restaurant, shops pilgrims frequent, and so on. Obviously, they're in favor because it is essential to their livelihood. A lot of people also benefit indirectly from pilgrims because they know the hotel they work in. Pilgrims are important to them. Because of the pilgrimage, we also get a lot of normal tourists, like the cruise ships who more in A Coruña. They offer bus tours to see Santiago during the day. So buses come into Santiago, park a little bit outside, and then have guided tours around the old town, large groups very often. So it's not only the pilgrims, it's only also the pilgrims cause a lot of visiting tourists.
Okay. So now, before we get on to my final question, which I know is related to something that's very precious to you, and which I think is a wonderful thing that you do.
If I can elaborate a little bit more on the impact of pilgrims in Santiago, it also depends where the people live. For example, I live more on the entrance of the Camino, into very close to Old
get
Town.
more noise.
So we get a lot of pilgrims coming through, And whilst we have a few albergues here in this part of town and tourist flats, which pilgrims also rent, but the benefits are less. They might stop for coffee, but once they're in Santiago, they prefer to stay in the center. They spend most of their money in the souvenir shops, in the bars and restaurants in Old Town. And where I lived before, which was very close, if you remember, where the Camino to Finisterre in Mochia starts. Again, it was less crowded because only a few pilgrims continue by foot or bike to Finisterre and Mochia.
Yeah. Okay.
I had conversations here with neighbors who live in this neighborhood. One thing which has reduced now, become less so, but in the beginning, after travel opened up after the pandemic, there were quite a few quite elderly people who told me, "Oh, all the strangers, what do they bring us now on illnesses?" So there was
okay. I'm very worried,
because we went through one of the strictest lockdowns in Europe, and there was quite a bit go slowly when the pilgrim masses and the visitors reappeared. And then the other thing is because a lot of pilgrims, especially the large groups, start very early in the day to arrive in the morning in Santiago, time to go to the pilgrim office and to the 12 o'clock mass in the cathedral, which means they start very early and come singing, collecting their walking sticks at a very early hour. But also during the day, it's not, I really, I half jokingly said on the forum, we should introduce a new tradition, walking the last kilometer to the cathedral in silence. Because it's not only early in the morning. Imagine, I don't know if you have children, I don't remember, but imagine you have a newborn or a very small baby and you just got into sleep. It might even be colicky, and you're like, and suddenly a group of singing, clicking, shouting pilgrims, and your baby is awake again.
Yeah.
Or you are elderly, and for the first time in your life, you can have a quiet morning, sleeping in a bit, or work the night shift. I think it's important to remind all pilgrims that Santiago is not only the goal of the pilgrimage, but there are really real people living here.
Yeah, that's a
People
good
who
point.
perhaps have very little to do with the Camino, but very much to do with Santiago. And they also deserve being able to live their life peacefully.
No, that's good. Sorry, we had a slight pause with a glitch in the internet there. So the point being, if you're coming through Santiago in the early morning, if there's a big group of you, respect the local community and try not to make too much noise. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. So now, before we get on to the topic I really want to talk about, what would be your number one tip for someone planning their first Camino?
Oof.
That's a tough
I
one.
would say what I've observed on the forum and Facebook groups is to be realistic. Be realistic with the time you have, be realistic with your fitness level, and adjust accordingly, and stay open-minded. If you notice that you have bitten up too much, really take a rest day, shorten the Camino. I know for people like you who come from Australia, there is a pressure to do it, especially first time, I guess. But there is, for example, there is no law that you have to start in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port for the Camino Frances and have to crawl over the Pyrenees. In fact, my first Camino, I started in Roncesvalles because I was in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. I was not fit. My backpack was far too heavy. I had one look at the Pyrenees, and hightailed it to Roncesvalles.
That's
So it
very
actually,
wise.
I don't, yes, that was in 99. The first time I actually crossed Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Roncesvalles was 15 years later.
Wow.
So there is, and here in Spain, the Spanish pilgrims typically all start in Roncesvalles, if they start in the Pyrenees.
Yeah.
Very few start in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port.
Yeah, I mean, there is no historical significance about Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, is there?
No, really, there isn't. It was just the first guidebooks needed to have a starting point for their guidebook, and that somehow became the Camino started by whatever means you could do at your own door.
Yeah.
And obviously that's something very special because I've done it. In 2014, I lived in Prague in the Czech Republic, and I actually walked from Prague to Santiago de Compostela.
Oh, there's the topic of another interview.
Yes, long distance pilgrimage. It's
Yeah,
certainly a
yeah.
very special experience, and I was very fortunate that I had the time to do it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
For pilgrims like you can't, well, you can walk from the door of your house to the next airport, but that's basically it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say the most important tip I would say is being realistic with yourself, with the time and fitness you have.
No, that's
And
great
don't be
advice.
afraid to change things if you notice that what you planned isn't working out.
Yeah, that's great advice. Don't put yourself under pressure by having an unrealistic time frame or an unrealistic expectation of your fitness and so on.
Yeah.
Now, we have one very important topic to talk about. Because Sybille, whilst you're sort of well known in Camino circles and you have a wealth of experience to share about the Camino, you also do something very special in Santiago, your food pantry. So tell us about your food pantry, how that started, and what's it all about.
Okay. When I first moved to Santiago, I did what you know as the open house, opened the house where I lived at that time for coffee and tea in the afternoons. And the second and third year I lived in Santiago, I was actually, now comes the really big mouthful, the lead coordinator for the Anglican Episcopalian Camino chaplaincy, which means we had chaplains, mainly priests, but also the odd deacon coming in and providing services for pilgrims who are from Protestant churches. That was the first time that happened here in Santiago on a regular base. And in November 2019, for practical reasons, I moved to the house where I'm now, with the idea staying there 6 months over the winter, and then the next year finding again a bigger place and continuing with the chaplaincy work. Now we all know what happened in 2020. What was meant to be a 6-month stay is now 5 years. I'm still in the same house, only on another, how you say, story. So even in the beginning, before the pandemic hit us, I noticed that there were people living in my neighborhood where the young men of the family would dumpster dive for useful things. And at least here in Santiago, dumpster diving is not a subculture like in many other countries where the more young alternative people do it. That was really out of need, out of not having enough. And at that time I had a balcony. I think you might remember the photos on Facebook. So I could see that the people who lived just a few houses down from me, got food delivered or supplies delivered from the Red Cross and other social organizations here. But it obviously stopped after the lockdown was a bit less strict. And I also had noticed that a lot of them, especially the women, were actually begging in the streets. Now, if you don't have tourists coming into town, the money you can raise with begging is pretty close to zero. And then they started to knock at my door and ask if I had something to eat for them. Two things. That obviously Spain has a pretty reasonable social system. But to give you an idea, what somebody who's fully on social benefits gets here in Spain, an adult is around 500 euro a month, and if they have children, I think it's last time I looked it up, a little bit less than 100 euro. So a single mother with 2 children has to live on 700 euro a month, including clothing, groceries, food, rent if she doesn't get help with that, water, electricity bills, and so on. And I think you can imagine, the prices here in Spain. Living on that is really borderline. So it's often said that the real social net here in Spain is the family. But if the whole family is poor, then this also falls through. And the reason they started to knock at the door of the house where I live is that this house always had a bit the name of being a religious house. The late uncle of my landlord was a Roman Catholic priest. On the first floor are living the volunteers of the Camino companions who help with the Roman Catholic Mass in English and the Pilgrims office. So the neighborhood knows that in this house religious people live. So in the beginning, to cut a long story short, I just put a few more things in my own shopping basket, and then it increased until I think it was October 2020 that I needed for the first time actually order delivery because I couldn't carry it anymore. At that time I lived on the first floor, and when I moved to the third floor where I'm now, my landlord allowed me to put the shelves for the food pantry in the house vestibule entrance. So that is where it's now since around 3 years.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so to give you an idea, it's around 16, 20 people that are helped with this. That's obviously not all what they need for the whole month. It's more filling the gaps what other services don't provide. For example, there are a lot of diabetics, so there are things which are apt for diabetics to eat without having to make any complicated calculations. Fresh fruit and vegetable, which is for larger food banks more difficult to organize. Logistics, things go off. And also cleaning products, even toilet paper, things like that. I also collect from 2 points in Santiago pretty regularly. That's Casa Iva and Pilgrim House, in kind donation of clothing and mainly clothing, but also books and children's toys, which some people collect for me, and they go also on the shelves. And these families, actually they then share it again with their wider family. All the people that come to the house are related to each other, and they belong, interestingly, and by no intention and no planning, all to what you call gypsies, Romano gypsies.
Roma. Yeah.
In Spain, it's generally better to use the term gitanos, because the word gypsy in English, as you know, isn't a positive one. And my weekly shopping list starts with 12 to 18 liters of milk, 10 to 15 kilos of potatoes, several kilos, obviously, of fresh fruit and vegetable, several kilos of pasta, rice. Not even with my face. It's just, I, since as far as I can remember, believe that every human being has certain rights
Mm.
simply by the fact that they were born a human being, like a roof over their head, clean water, access to education, and access to food and basic groceries like toilet paper and cleaning products.
It's an amazing thing that you're doing. Now, there may be people watching this who are thinking, that's incredible. I'd love to support Sybille in what she's doing. And there is a way they can do that, because whether you like it or not, I'm going to put a link down below the video.
I like it very much. There are actually several ways to support it. One which I promote the most is there's a GoFundMe going on where I hope to raise enough money to keep the pantry covered until the end of the year, and then we will see for the next fundraiser. It's also, if there is more money in the virtual or donation box for the pantry, it allows me then to buy things which are on offer and have a long shelf life in bulk.
That's good.
So, for example, one of my local supermarkets at the moment has pasta on offer, which I need anyway. So having a bit of a cushion in the donation box then allows me, instead of buying 5 kilo pasta, buying 20 kilo pasta, and in the long run save some money. There is, if you want, also on my website, I sent you the link. There's a lot of photos. The whole pantry story, it's the latest blog post, which shows in photos and words how the pantry has developed over the years, and more ideas how people can help or donate. And like I said, often I'm always happy to welcome people, to show them the pantry. It's not some huge multi-room setup. It's a small thing.
Yeah. They'll see that on the website. Yeah.
Yes, I had people visiting, helping me restocking the shelves. Then normally we go for coffee and chat, and I explain more about poverty in Santiago. I just looked it up for something else. I think it should be also Pilgrims be aware of in general. It's just under 10% of people who live in Galicia live under or the poverty line.
Wow.
Yes, and or are in danger, in acute danger of going into poverty and social exclusion.
Wow.
And I often wonder what people think when pilgrims are walking in, speaking in foreign languages. If you literally struggle every day to make ends meet, it's hard. It must be hard to see pilgrims flying over from all over the world in shiny new gear. I think obviously pilgrims keep coming. It keeps a large part of what keeps Santiago alive. But I think it's important to be conscious that you are not walking through some mystic Camino wonderland. You're walking through a country where real people live their real day-to-day lives. And some of them, like in other countries, in many other countries, are struggling to make ends meet. So
no, that's a very good point.
I think that's to be something to be aware of.
No, that's okay. So this is what we're going to do, Sybille. I'll put a link down below the video to your website where people can read about the food pantry and see all the photos. I will also put a link to the GoFundMe page, and I will challenge anybody watching this, jump on there, and if you can, give something, and I'll be the first to do it when this video gets published. So you'll see my name there, and you can
thank you very much, and thank you for your previous donations. And if you want to have any photos or use any photos in this video, feel free to rip them off my website or message me if you need anything else.
We might do that. So, well, we started off talking about the Camino. We ended up on a totally different topic, but a much better topic. And Sybille, it's great to talk to you again. It's so many years since I last saw you. And thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Yes, and hope to see you again when you come to Santiago.
Yeah, absolutely. Next year, and I'll have Pat with me again. Yeah.
Good. And the rice cooker.
No, no rice cooker this time. I'm not carrying a rice cooker. Sybille, great to see you again. Bye for now.
Same, bye.